Squid Game, the show that's been all the rage for a good while, with people making all sorts of edits about the different characters in the show and even having debates about which of them are the smartest. One of the more particularly interesting discussions is how well would certain smart characters do against each other in the challenges of the Squid Game tournament. So in this video, we will aim to analyze this matchup based on the approaches of many smart characters whom will be included, and we'll face up against the challenges of the show with an included twist for the video. The characters that will be included are Baku Madarame, Kiruma Soichi, Hotaro Oreki, Johan Liebert, Kiyotaka Ayanokoji, Kokichi Oma, Lawliet, Lelouch Lemperouge, Light Yagami, Nagito Komaeda, Osamu Dazai, Senku Ishigami, Shinichi Akiyama, Sosuke Aizen, Yumeko Jabami, and Yuichi Katagiri. We'll be sticking to the widely known characters as well as ones that are iconic in intelligence battles, and it goes without saying that their physical capabilities will be equalized and their magical abilities will be negated. Only their intelligence will remain the same as in their canon. And without further introduction, let the Squid Games begin. The players awoke in an unfamiliar cavern of iron. Cold, grey walls rose to an unseen ceiling, and stacked bunk beds, layers upon identical layers, lined the perimeter like a metal honeycomb. A single monolithic iron door dominated the center. Gi-hun, however, was unfazed. This place was his salvation, a way out of his endless debt and a chance to save his mother. He scanned the room. Most were ordinary Korean citizens, drowning in the same desperation he felt. But a distant group of about 16 stood out. There was one who carried himself like a college student. Another huddled his knees to his chest. A woman with long, unfocused eyes, and a tall, unnervingly broad-shouldered man. They were all different, yet they shared a certain intensity. Are they connected? Gi-hun wondered. Maybe I should join them. It might be my only chance. The iron door ground open. Men in pink jumpsuits filed in, some brandishing rifles while others carried clipboards and tables. The man in the center explained why they were there, what they had volunteered for. Before the games could begin, they had to sign a contract. It contained 3 clauses. Clause 1, a player is not allowed to stop playing. Clause 2, a player who refuses to play will be eliminated. Clause 3, if a majority of players vote to stop the games, all current players will be sent home. As the last few signatures were collected, a player spoke up. A chilling confidence radiated from him, a stark contrast to his twisted, jet black hair. His expression held a predatory stillness, hinting at a mind that saw the world not as a home, but as a chessboard. "Excuse me, Mr. Administrator," he began. "I have a question. 2 of your clauses state that we cannot stop playing, that forfeiting is the same as losing. Do tell, is violence between players permitted for the sake of winning?" Gi-hun stared in disbelief. Who would ask such a thing so early? The lead guard answered without hesitation. "You can try. We carry these rules for a reason, Katagiri Yuichi." Yuichi smiled faintly. You know my name," he mused. Was that meant to be a threat? More importantly, you haven't answered my question. Before he could finish, a man with spiky white hair stepped into his personal space, placing a hand on his shoulder. In a voice just above a whisper, he said, "Hey kid, I suggest you don't grind their gears." One of them was about to raise his rifle. "Besides, I'm sure you already have your answer." The man walked away. Yuichi fell silent, but the unsettling smile never left his face. With all the contracts signed, the lead guard announced the start of the first game. They were led to a vast sandy field. At the far end stood a finish line and a giant robotic girl, an iron tree painted to look ordinary looming behind her. The game was announced. Red light, green light. The rules were simple. The robot girl would sing, and when she stopped and turned, anyone caught moving would be eliminated. The first 2 rounds went smoothly, but Gi-hun noticed something strange. Most of the 16 odd players were huddled together in a corner, motionless. A timer was counting down. If you didn't cross the line, you lose. Why weren't they moving? Had he overestimated them? He got his answer in the 3rd round. As the robot head snapped around, a few players failed to stop in time. The sharp crack of rifles echoed through the field, and they fell. Panic erupted. A wave of terrified players scrambled for the exit, only to be cut down as they ran. A dozen corpses soon piled up against the steel door. In that one moment of chaos, 100 players were gone. One of them, a boy identified by the announcer as Hotaro Oreki, had been part of the strange group. As the other players froze in terror, Gihan finally understood. The other players hadn't moved because they had predicted the panic. They wanted to stay clear of the stampede. When the fourth round began, they started moving, not in a panic, but with purpose. They all moved at a moderate pace, except for two. One, whose bandages covered most of his body, betrayed only by his messy brown hair. The other, a white-haired boy whose hair spiked in unnaturally long strands. They were practically racing. "Man, this is already way more fun than I thought," shouted the bandaged one Dazai. "Same here," the white-haired boy replied. "And I'm sure you'll have more fun when I leave you in the dust, Dazai." Gihan's blood ran cold. "They enjoying this?" "They're having fun," a voice murmured nearby. It was a white-haired man from before, speaking to no one in particular. "I'd love to join if I could run that fast."
Red light.
Everyone froze, gunshots, then green again. Gihan crossed the finish line, gasping for air. The two racers had finished long ago, and the other odd contestants were not far behind. He let his guard down, contemplating an alliance. Back in the main room, chaos reigned. Players begged to be let go. "If I may," a voice cut through the noise. It was the college student, Yagami. "I believe it's within our right to refute your statement. Clause 3 of the contract explicitly states that if a majority votes to leave, we are allowed to go home." The lead guard pressed a button. A transparent piggy bank descended from the ceiling, and billions of won rained down into it. He pressed another button, and a small voting platform rose from the floor. "You may begin the vote. Influencing the decision of the other players is forbidden." A man stepped forward, player 001. He moved with an unhurried grace that seemed utterly out of place in their squalid desperation. He was handsome, but it wasn't a confronting beauty. It was sharp, aristocratic, and unnervingly serene. He turned, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. He didn't speak, but a faint, almost paternal smile touched his lips. It wasn't a smile of camaraderie. It was a smile of ownership. With a placid confidence, he pressed the button to stay. More players followed, many choosing to stay. When it was Gihan's turn, his mind was clear. "I have to leave, for my mother, for myself." The thought was a desperate, burning mantra. But as he approached the platform, a strange calm settled over him. His hand rose, drifting toward the stay button as if guided by an invisible current. A jolt of pure panic shot through him. "What am I doing?" He tried to pull his arm back, but it was like fighting a deep, gentle tide. The thought of leaving now felt foolish. The money, the chance to fix everything, it was so clear, so logical. His eyes met the blonde man's across the room. The serene smile was still there, and in that gaze, Gihan felt an impossible sense of belonging. It was the pull of a dark star, unseen, unfelt, until you realize your orbit is already decaying. The click of a button was stopped. Final. He had voted to stay. He stumbled away, a cold sweat on his brow, a terrifying question echoing in his mind. Was that my choice? The next day, they entered a room resembling a playground, with 4 doors marked by shapes: a star, a circle, a triangle, and an umbrella. A slim boy with brown hair, Gihan thought he remembered the name, Kiyotaka, stepped forward and walked directly to the triangle door without a word. The group split. A few followed Kiyotaka. Dazai, his white-haired boy companion Nagito, and a woman with silky hair chose the umbrella. Yagami and a man with a perpetually hunched back went for the circle. Trusting the confidence Dazai had shown, Gihan chose the umbrella. It was a mistake. They were each given a tin of honeycomb candy with their chosen shape pressed into it. The goal? Crave it out perfectly. The triangle was the easiest. The umbrella was the hardest. How did Kiyotaka know? Every few seconds, a gunshot signaled another failure. A player with spiky hair, white at the roots and green at the tips, spoke up. Why so nervous? They're just honeycombs. Get them a little wet and the sugar will melt just enough to make craving easy. Isn't it exhilarating? Gihan looked down. A drop of his own sweat had landed on the candy. He touched the spot with his needle and felt it give way slightly. He began licking the honeycomb, carefully tracing the umbrella outline. Soon, he was finished, with plenty of time to spare. He sighed in relief, then noticed two of the odd players weren't even participating. "Hey Hal, you're gonna run out of time," said the white-haired man, Baku, speaking to a tall man with long black hair. "I see no reason to engage with this," Hal replied coolly. "You do realize you'll be shot, right?" "They can try." This came not from Hal, but from the other idol player, a man with long brown hair and unimposing stature. "They will see what happens when they try to mess with Sosuke Aizen." Just as Gihan began to worry about their sanity, Dazai's voice chirped up. "Oh man, I broke it." He looked up at the guard, a mask of theatrical disappointment on his face, not fear. "Can I get a retry?" A single, defeating shot answered him. His white-haired companion, Nagito, didn't flinch. "Huh, I can't believe you lost to a worthless loser like me, Dazai. Worry not, I'll carry on our hope." He handed the guard his own perfectly craved honeycomb. The silky-haired woman from their group smiled. "Your resilience is admirable, Nagito. Even with your friend's death, your hope is unshaken. It's no fun if there are no stakes," she replied when he questioned her choice. Hal and Aizen were shot and taken into their own caskets. Just before the guards had fired, Baku, watching from a distance, had given a barely perceptible nod in their direction. Now, as their caskets were carried away, he simply smiled, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. The next day, they entered a circular room. The game was Mingle. A song would play, a number would be announced, and players had 30 seconds to form a group of that size and enter a room. Anyone left out would be eliminated. "I know the first number," a short boy with purple hair, Kokichi Oma, shouted. Players swarmed him. "The number is... I don't know, I was lying." He laughed maniacally as the speaker announced the real number, 10. The players around him were forced to team up out of desperation. Gihan passed that round, and the next. In his third group, he found himself with 4 others, one too many. Before anyone could react, Kadagiri Yuichi slipped in behind one of their teammates and began choking him. A woman screamed that he was breaking the rules. At no point did they forbid violence to reach the designated number. Yuichi replied calmly over the man's final gasp. "If anything, I saved us all." For the next round, the number was 3. Gihan found himself facing 2 more of the odd players, Akiyama Shinichi, an adult man with striking orange hair, and Baku Madarame, the white-haired man. They formed a team. For the final round, the number was 6. The silky-haired woman, Yumeko Jabami, joined them, as did Kiyotaka and Nagito. With their team complete, Gihan was safe again. During the rest period, Gihan watched the guards break up a scuffle. Most were rigid, almost robotic in their movements, but he noticed 2 who stood apart. One had a strangely regal posture, an authority that didn't match his rank. The other moved with forward, predatory grace. Gihan blinked, and they blended back into the group. He shook the thought away, blaming it on exhaustion. They were next taken to a room filled with numbered vests. Wary of hesitating, Gihan grabbed vest number 20. The game was set on a high bridge connecting 2 towers, paved with pairs of glass panels. One was tempered, the other would shatter. They had 20 minutes to cross. Player number 1, Senku, stepped forward. "You administrators may know my name, but you don't know my passion for science. Allow me to demonstrate." He studied the light reflecting off the first 2 panels, then confidently jumped. He was right. He continued, discerning the tempered glass by its polarization, with others following his path. But the administrators caught on. The lights in the room shut off. Robbed of his method, Senku made a guess. It was wrong. He fell to his death. The next players fell off one by one. Kokichi Oma, number 2, also perished. The line stalled, paralyzed by fear. "It would seem sacrifice is a prerequisite for progress," a new voice declared. It was Lelouch Lamperouge, a scrawny but valiant-looking member of the odd group. He took 3 correct steps before he too fell, but his sacrifice broke the paralysis. The line began moving again, each death revealing another safe step. More than half the players survived, including Gihan. The next game was a 6-legged pentathlon, followed by tug of war. In the latter, the teams were randomized. Gihan found himself on a team with Kiyotaka. They were pitted against a team that included Katagiri Yuichi. Just before the start, Kiyotaka whispered a simple, counterintuitive strategy to Gihan, who passed it down their line. The moment the buzzer sounded, Katagiri's team pulled with all their might, but Gihan's team didn't resist. Instead, they took 3 coordinated steps forward. Thrown off balance, the opposing team stumbled and fell backward. In that instant, Gihan's team leaned back and pulled. The advantage was absolute. A loud snap echoed as the rope was severed by the guillotine, and the sound of bodies hitting the floor far below followed. 20 players remained. The next day's game was marbles. Using your set of 10 marbles, play the game of your choice with your partner. The player who takes all 10 marbles wins. The cold voice once again snapped him to reality. A game with, at best, a 50% survival rate. Yumeko and Baku, however, were ecstatic. They found each other immediately. Gihan watched as other players paired up. Kiyotaka and Lawliet, Akiyama with the nameless blonde man. Just then, a hand extended to him. "Play me, Gihan," Nagito said. Gihan accepted. Nagito proposed a simple guessing game, and Gihan, despite having abandoned all hope, found himself winning. It was as if Nagito was anticipating his every move, subtly guiding his choices to ensure his own loss. "Listen, Gihan," Nagito whispered, his tone suddenly serious. "I was waiting to find people I could trust. The games are unfair, but the people still left, you all have it. You didn't look like you could win. Not with your mental state. But that's where I come in. I am the ultimate hope." Gihan was in a way. Before he could respond, Nagito placed his last marble forcefully into Gihan's hand. "Destroy the Squid Game administration. Live, praise me as the ultimate hope, and build me a bronze statue to revere my status." With those parting words, Nagito walked to the guard, declared his loss, and was shot where he stood. A fire was lit in Gihan's soul. He would end this nightmare. As he walked out to deliver his marbles, he passed the aftermath of another game. Akiyama Shinichi was on his knees, his face a mask of utter disbelief. The blonde man stood over him, holding all 20 marbles. Even the Liar King isn't immune to deception, it seems. The blonde man murmured, his voice devoid of emotion. Another thread cut. He turned away as the guard approached. Gihan hurried past, the chilling finality of those words echoing louder than the gunshot that followed. Back in the dorm, now with only 10 beds, Gihan waited for the lights to go out. He then moved silently, whispering a plan to the other 9 survivors. The next day, after a formal dinner, each player pocketed their steak knife. The last game was held on a large field with the shape of a squid drawn on the ground. The final 10 players stood ready. The VIPs, watching from a private lounge, grew displeased as the players refused to begin. The frontman, leader of the operation, turned to order 2 nearby guards to execute a player. The guards didn't move. He reached for his own gun, but his opponent was faster. A rifle pressed against his side. The guard holding it laughed as he removed his helmet, revealing the face of Sosuke Aizen. "You underestimate their will, mister." "How? When?" the front man stammered. "Your guards rarely aim for the head. A chest wound isn't immediately lethal," Aizen explained calmly. "My associate and I thought of the same thing. We faked our deaths, allowed ourselves to be taken to the incinerator, and overpowered the grunts there. We have been among your ranks for days." Down below, the guards at the Squid Game field heard a gunshot. Before they could react, a body shattered the VIP's glass window and fell to the ground. It was their leader. As the guards stared in shock, the players attacked. With their hidden knives, they created chaos. "Great job, you all," a voice echoed from the broken window. It was Hal. He allowed himself a grim, fleeting smile. "That dumbass would have loved this." he thought, before his expression hardened again, his focus returning to the battle below. The players stormed the facility to regroup with their hidden allies. They pushed forward into a hail of gunfire. Aizen, moving with terrifying speed, grabbed a panicked guard and held him up as a living shield. The guard's body jerked as bullets slammed into him. Once the volley stopped, Aizen contemptuously tossed the corpse aside and advanced. Gihan froze, horrified. They're just following orders, he thought, a cold dread washing over him. Were these saviors any different from the monsters they were fighting? The nameless blonde man, however, had stayed behind. He walked to the front man's dying body, who looked up into a darkness that made death feel like a welcome release. All the documentation connecting me to this, the blonde man said, his voice a low command. Burn it. The front man, without protest, handed him a small encased button, a dead man's switch. The blonde man took it without a word. Inside, the battle was fierce. Kiyotaka, leading the charge, suddenly screamed, "We have to go, now!" He set the charges. The whole island is rigged to blow. They sprinted for the exit. A huge, locked gate controlled by a numpad. Yumeko shoved past the others, her hands flying across the keypad in a flurry of chaotic, joyful presses. Gihan couldn't believe it when, against all odds, the lock clicked open. She hadn't known the code. She had simply gambled on it and won. They burst out into the night air and dove into the cold sea just as a massive explosion tore the facility apart behind them, casting a brilliant, fiery light over the dark water. It was over. Now that was certainly an explosive ending. In this scenario, Aizen Sosuke, Kiruma Soichi, Yumeko Jabami, and Ayanokoji Kiyotaka survive alongside Gihan. Johan's fate is fittingly ambiguous, but who do you guys think truly won? Are there any characters who you wish were included? Do you believe some characters could have lived over others? Should we continue the plot from here after season 3 drops? Or should we rerun it with different characters? Share your thoughts down below in the comments. And thank you for watching.